Nameless, Tennessee, the story that I'm asking you guys to read for this week is one of my favorites. I think it's a beautiful story, and when students first read it, they don't really like it, but I just want to go over some key parts of this story. One, the opening paragraph is incredible, and I'll tell you why. The details, oh my gosh. It says, Nameless, Tennessee was a town of maybe 90 people if you pushed it, right? Objective detail. Dozens of houses along the road, couple barns, same number of churches, general merchandise stores selling fire chief gasoline, community center with a lighted volleyball court. I love how this town is run down, but it has a lighted volleyball court, a court with lights. That's kind of cool. It says a lot about this town. In one little detail, behind the center was an open roof, rusty metal privy, but with paint neat on the door. In the hollow of a nearby oak lay a full pint of Jack Daniel's Black Label. From the houses here smell this odor of coal smoke. Great detail. Next to a red tobacco barn stood the general merchandise with the poster of Senator Al Gore Jr. smiling from the window, etc. That's a great opening line. Great details. A lot of different details from sight to smell. Very, very good. And so what happens is this guy, he goes up to this door and he knocks on the door and he asks, I want to know how this town got its name. And if somebody knocked on my door and wanted to know how did Ocean Beach get its name, I'd say, you need to leave. You're crazy. Like, I'm calling the cops. Get out of my house, right? But he doesn't do that. These people welcome him in. They sit him down. They feed him pie. And they go to tell him the name. And the reason why this town got its name is because they wanted to get a post office and the town was so small that they didn't have a post office, so they had to come up with a name in order to get their mail delivered there. And somebody just shouted, this here is the most nameless town that I've ever seen. And there's a couple, I really like the dialogue in this story as well. The dialogue's great, and I love how the characters speak. I love some of the lines, like on the second page. It says, we used to have signs on the road, but them Halloween boys keep tearing them down. I love that. I love the slang. And I've said this before, dialogue, you can use slang, you can use swear words. I love how they do that. And I love, instead of saying Cookville, they say Coville. I love how they say, instead of atheists, they say Atheians. And I like how they keep it in their language. I really, really like that. I think that's awesome the way they do that. And so this guy comes in, they sit down, they tell him how this town got its name. And I like how he eats buttermilk pie. They put on this phonograph, and he says this is the reason why I've come to this town. And the author, what he did was he just drove his truck around all across the South, and he just collected stories. So we talked about this before, the observing, collecting stories, searching for stories. This is what he was doing. So when he sits down and he eats this buttermilk pie, I actually made buttermilk pie for my class one time after we read this story. I would love to do it for you guys, but we're online. But, he eats pie, he's listening to this old music, and he's trying to capture this. That's the art of storytelling. And then they talk about Miss Jenny's death book. And I think that's one of the pivotal points of this whole story, where this woman would wake up every single morning and she'd write down the people who died in this town. She'd keep their names. She'd jot all of that down, which sounds crazy, right? But I think that's pretty powerful. And I like it, and I'll tell you why. I was watching a 60 Minutes episode a while back, and there was a mental institution that had been open for like 200 years. And when somebody would die in the mental hospital, they would call the family. They say, we have your mom or dad or somebody, your brother, in a coffee can. We cremated them. They're in a coffee can. We'd like you to come pick them up and give them a proper burial. And people forgot. They never picked up their family. So in the basement of this mental institution, there's stacks and stacks of these coffee cans, and everybody forgot. And so this story is pushing that. It's saying that we need to remember people. We need to value people. We need to see people who they are. We need to appreciate people. And I like that about this story a lot. It's really the heart of the story if you're looking for that. And at the very end, there's something else I want to point out. I really like this idea. So the narrator, he leaves, and Watts, the protagonist of this story, he tries to sell him his story. He's like, I want you to buy my story. See, you have a stranger knocking on your door saying, hey, how did this town get its name? And by the end of the story, they want to sell you the story. They're very nice people, very kind people. But then he says, you have to come back sometime, and we could go looking for some of them rocks all sparkly inside. And the narrator says, geodes, them's the one, the county's properly full of them. That's the ending. Those are the last couple lines. And I just talked about metaphors in another video. But a geode is a rock. It looks ugly on the outside. You crack it open, and there's purple amethyst on the inside. And that rock is a metaphor for this town. Because on the outside, it looks rough. There doesn't seem to be anything cool about it. But once you crack it open and you look at what's inside, it's beautiful. And I thought that was a very, very clever ending. Very powerful ending. And that's one hell of a metaphor. So in terms of the story, the details are phenomenal. It has parts of narration, it has some great dialogue, but it also is doing metaphors using subjective detail, objective detail, a lot of things that I want you guys to start looking at and thinking about if you're going to become a good creative writer. Thank you for listening.